A lot of you guys are really wrong about Trevor Lawrence being overrated. Think about what the Jacksonville Jaguars were as an organization before they drafted Trevor Lawrence #1 overall. They weren't getting talked about from the national media. They didn't play in any primetime games. I have been watching the Jaguars all my life, and I've been living in this city for around 17, 18 years. And my first time ever seeing this team play on Sunday Night Football and Monday night was last year. They didn't start getting primetime games until Trevor Lawrence came, and he had that big year too. They also have had way more fans show up to Jaguar games than what Jacksonville has had in the past, even when they went to the AFC Championship a few years back with Blake Bortles and they got robbed by the refs against the Patriots. A lot of fans still weren't attending the games, and they still weren't getting talked about as much as what they are now with Trevor Lawrence. What Trevor Lawrence has done, many of you guys don't understand just what he has brought to the city of Jacksonville. Because there's nothing to do in this city. You know, they closed down the Landing. There aren't too many things to do downtown outside of ride the scooters. The only thing that you can do in Jacksonville is go to Jaguar games. And there wasn't really a reason to go to one with how bad this team has been historically. But ever since Trevor Lawrence has been the starting quarterback for this ball club, he has brought hope and optimism to this city. There are people now who once upon a time used to be afraid to say they were a Jaguars fan because they had Blaine Gabbert and Chad Henne and Blake Bortles at QB. Now you have T-Law, who you know when he's playing at his best, not only is he a top 10 quarterback in the game, but he's good enough to bring Jacksonville to a Super Bowl. That's how good Trevor Lawrence is when he's playing at his best. And a lot of people in the national media don't talk about just how much he has changed the Jaguars franchise. If it wasn't for him, I don't think Sean Khan would be getting a new stadium built, because there would be no reason to do so with low attendance numbers and bad ticket sales. And let's not also forget that from a production and performance standpoint, Trevor Lawrence, this early into his career, is already the greatest quarterback this team has ever had. People like to bring up Mark Brunell. If you go and you look at Brunell's numbers back in the day, I know that it was a different style of football played back in the early 2000s than what is played now. But his numbers were really ugly. I mean, the dude went to the Pro Bowl throwing 20 touchdowns and like 17 interceptions. Trevor Lawrence is a way more efficient quarterback and a way better pure passer than what Mark Brunell or David Garrard ever were. And from a talent standpoint, you compare T-Law to Brunell or David Garrard or anybody else you want to say is the best QB in Jags history, it's not even close. This dude is a gunslinger, and it's shown by him being top 5 in the NFL since he's gotten drafted, and big-time throws and deep touchdown passes. Did you know that Trevor Lawrence last season led the NFL in big-time throws with 30? That means that he was making a lot of throws against tight man-to-man coverage and small windows. When he's on, there aren't too many quarterbacks that are better than Sunshine. The problem with Trevor Lawrence was that after the first half of last season, when he started to get banged up around the time when they played the San Francisco 49ers and they got blown out, he wasn't the same player that he was the second half of 2023 that he was the first half of last season. Now with him being fully healthy, you're going to see more consistency out of him. You're going to see reduced turnover numbers. And what really irks me about the people who criticize Trevor Lawrence for being turnover prone is that people used to hype up Andrew Luck of being the next great quarterback in the league, but they just ignore how many turnovers he had. There were games when Andrew Luck had 3-4 turnovers, and yet the Indianapolis Colts were still winning games in spite of it because of how good he was. You can say the same for Trevor Lawrence. That wild card win that He led the Jaguars to from behind when they were down, 28-0 at halftime. He threw 4 picks in the first half. He led them to that comeback because of how good he was in the second half of that game. And it's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. Andrew Luck was the same way. He'll be really reckless and careless with the football. But then when the game was on the line and you needed him to step up and make big throws to win it for you, he always came through the majority of times. Trevor Lawrence last year, with him not being healthy, it hindered him. That's why they lost to Tennessee. That's why they didn't really give the 49ers too much of a fight, or even the Baltimore Ravens. But when Trevor Lawrence is healthy and he's at his best, we know that he's a top 12 quarterback in the game. And the only reason why he gets called overrated is because of where he was drafted and the expectations that comes with being the first overall pick and having that generational quarterback label bestowed upon you. But he kind of has lived up to the expectations when you think about it, because let me ask you this. When you draft a player first overall in the draft, what are you expecting? You're expecting this guy to change your franchise. Has Trevor Lawrence not done that? He has Jacksonville playing in Sunday night, Monday night games, something that they were never playing in before he arrived there. He led them to an AFC South championship. They've had back-to-back winning seasons, something that they haven't done well over in 2 decades. And Jacksonville fans are coming to the games because of how good not only they believe this team can be, but because they believe in Trevor Lawrence. And Jacksonville, although it's not a small city, people only talk about Jacksonville for the rap beef that goes on. Nobody really talks about Jacksonville Jaguars football unless it's Trevor Lawrence. So think about the national attention that he's brought to this team because he's on it. These are things that you never heard being mentioned with Jacksonville before Trevor Lawrence got drafted here. They've missed on quarterback so many times. I remember back when I was in elementary school and a few Jaguar players came to our school and they didn't have Blaine Gabbert. And I believe it was Rashard Jennings who was like, y'all want us to call Blaine Gabbert? And all of us were like, no. And we were boring the dude. And even though they knew that we didn't want to hear from Blaine Gabbert, we were boring the hell out of them, they decided to call the brother anyway. And we kept boring him with him being on the phone. And he's sitting there laughing about it. But I know it had to hurt him a little bit that the city wasn't embracing him. The city embraces Trevor Lawrence. You know, I'm not a Jaguars fan, but I do keep up with this team because I do live in the city. And this is the first player since Maurice Jones-Drew that this fan base will go to war over. You say something negative about Trevor Lawrence on social media, and Jaguar fans are at your damn neck, man. This is our guy. We believe in this brother. A lot of you guys who aren't Jaguar fans don't understand just how much he has meant to the city of Jacksonville and just how much he has turned around this team. Because tell me what Jacksonville was before Trevor Lawrence got here and he went into his second season and broke out. They were irrelevant. They were terrible. They struggled to sustain consistent success. And nobody even gave a damn to talk about them unless it was draft time. We are severely, well, I'm not going to say we, but a lot of you guys are severely overlooking the impact that Trevor Lawrence has had on the Jaguars organization and franchise. And it really rubs me the wrong way how people like to nitpick his stats and say he's in the same class as Daniel Jones. Let's be honest. If Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll had to choose between Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, I'm willing to bet $1 million they're taking Trevor Lawrence. He's just a way more talented player than what Daniel Jones is overall, and he's been able to overcome certain limitations that the Jaguars have had, like not having a good offensive line, not really having the best group of wide receivers. That's what you expect from a #1 pick. Plus, he has changed the Jaguars' culture, and he has changed the future trajectory of this franchise. Because if he wasn't a quarterback and you had Gardner Minshew still underneath center, who people also like to compare his stats with Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville would still be one of the worst teams in the NFL and nobody would be talking about them. The only reason people are paying attention to this club now is because of the spotlight that Trevor Lawrence has put on this team in this city because of his performance. He is not overrated when you think about what he has done for this franchise, how much he has changed the perception of Jaguars football, and how good he is when he's able to be fully healthy.